I have to tell you, I told my kids about all of this as
Yeah.
soon as I found out about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then when it came up at school, they came home and were like, oh, in sex ed, they didn't refer to us as girls and boys. They refer to us as AFABs and AMABs. What the hell is that? Do you know what
Oh,
that is?
hey everyone, I caught myself an amazing guest today. So with that, thanks everybody for watching, subscribing, commenting, really important, the comments, getting this to people who need to see it because that's why it's because of you that I get these amazing people on this show. So with that, I don't want to waste time here and I really want to get to this conversation because when you see what I have, you're going to be super jazzed about this whole conversation. So with that, I have Natalya, and I forgot how I was introduced to you, but through mutual people. But why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love your show. I'm Natalia. I'm here in New York City, bluest of blue areas, dealing with all of it. We've been through the ringer for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
I started an organization called Restore Childhood about 2 years ago in the height of the COVID mandates. I
Mhm.
have two kids who are 14 and 10 now, but they were about 5 and 9 when everything shut down, and our lives were changed forever. I was born in the Soviet Union in Odessa, which is now Ukraine.
Okay.
I speak Russian because when we left, we were still considered Russians. I'm also Jewish, and that was one of the reasons why we left because
Mm.
we had my parents wanted me to have a bright future, and they knew that as Jews, like our lives would be pretty circumspect, and my
Yeah.
prospects would be pretty small. So we came to the United States in 1977. I was raised in New York City in Brooklyn. And I know their stories. I lived in a multi-generational household where my grandmothers would come. My grandmother, really from Israel, would come and visit with us and tell us stories about what it was like back in the home country. And I want to make sure that we never let it happen again.
Thank you. Wow, that's a lot. Wow, fascinating. I mean, your parents really saw to get you here and out of all of that, which is pretty amazing that you got to sort of grow up and also being around all kinds of multicultural people is so important, I think, for so many reasons. But so you're going to be able to have this conversation with me, which I think this is how we did get connected in your organization called Restore Childhood. Is that the name of it? I want to know a little bit about that so we can move on with that conversation.
So back in 2020, when school shut down, I, registered Democrat, devastated that Trump was in office, super progressive, like voted for Biden twice, voted for Obama twice, Biden once. Anyway, I very comfortable in our community on the Upper West Side in
Mm.
Manhattan. These are my people. I think at one point we did a search to see how many people in this neighborhood and in our zip code had voted for Trump, and I think there were like two or three. I mean, this is a
Okay.
solid blue area, and I thought, our city council members, our mayor, everybody had our best interests. I felt like these were my people. And certainly the Democrats were the party of the children, right? They were going to
Yeah.
protect the children. They were the party of the vulnerable. I was with them. We were all good, right? And when school shut down, pretty shortly, it was pretty clear to us that blue areas were facing the most harshest restrictions, and our areas had child mask mandates, vaccine mandates. In New York City, we even had vaccine mandates for children as little as 6. My younger daughter was, I think, about 7 or 8 when the vaccine came out, and she was immediately booted from her gymnastics class because she hadn't been vaccinated. I mean, she wasn't even given a grace period. It was merciless. It was like, nope, you're all here. We all have to do the work, and we all have to keep each other safe. But it wasn't we
Mm-hmm.
were keeping each other safe. It was the
Mm-hmm.
kids that were being used as human shields.
Totally agree.
And so I was awakened, and first I was deeply concerned about the fact that children were being pushed to do online screen time. I mean, I knew early on that technology was like an opiate for children. I personally find it addictive. I was an English major, and since I got a smartphone, I've probably read like 5 or 6 books. Like, I just can't focus. It killed my attention span.
Yeah.
So, of course, I'm concerned about our children being pushed to technology and the popping videos and all of the fast-paced stuff. I started advocating for reopening schools back in 2020. We had rallies, we had marches, we had petitions. There were a handful of parents who had come together. You know, if you want to talk about organic protests, it's not what you're seeing right now with, with the printed signs and logos. Like,
Totally.
that's not organic protest. Okay, anybody who's been in an organic protest, like an open schools parent, can tell you. We were there. I can show you pictures that it was like, bad signs written by 6 year olds who were like, open our schools, or and anyway. So I was one of the open schools parents. And once we somewhat reopened the schools in New York City, by the way, in California, it was you're in California, much, much worse.
Totally.
We now had to deal with the mandates. And
Yeah.
every day, my kids would go to school. It was alternate days because we still had to keep social distancing
That's right.
rules. They would, you'd have to put muzzles on their faces. It was like a 6 year old and a 11 year old going to school. And every time I left, I had like a stone on my chest. I was like, this is so bittersweet. Like, I don't even want them there, but at the same time, I knew how important socialization was for them. But the other things I saw was that people in our city were keeping their kids out of school because they thought it was too dangerous to be in the
Right.
school building with their peers, but it was safer to be in the home with a built environment, no outdoor playtime, and a screen. And somehow we everything like turned upside down.
Yeah.
And I realized we needed to do something. And so the first thing we did was, well, I asked Randy Weingarten to have a drink with me so I could ask her to help me to unmask our children. Randy Weingarten, the head of the American Federation of Teachers, that's the second largest teachers union in the country. By the way, they also represent healthcare workers and retirees. So when people say
Oh.
teachers union, I think that's a misnomer. They
Okay.
have thousands and thousands of healthcare workers as well.
Wow.
So
Wow.
they're making money in a lot of different areas. Probably one of the reasons why they like the idea of community schools. They can staff them with union workers. You can really
Sure.
fuel the school to clinic pipeline. It's all in one place.
Oh my God.
Um, so
Wow.
anyway, so during 2021, when the kids were still masked, I asked Randy Weingarten to have a drink with me so we could talk, because at that point it was pretty clear that the teachers unions had written the CDC school reopening guidelines and the masking guidelines and all of the mitigations. The New York Post and Fox News had broken those stories. Nobody was even denying it at that point. It was like, yeah, so
Right.
what? So what? We're teachers. We have to make those. Like, not really, but anyway.
Yeah.
So to her credit, she went, and we had a very nice
Okay.
conversation. She's a lovely person in
Great.
person, and very, very, very kind and nice. And so I gave her a note from my daughter, who was at the time 7 or 8, and a little, rainbow loom bracelet, and it said, "Please unmask us. What can you do to unmask us? We're not happy masked." And what Randy said to me, well, she said, if you give me a proposal that I can present to the CDC, me, a mom in New York City, I don't have a medical degree.
Yeah.
Yes, but if I can give her a proposal to present to the CDC, she would give it to the CDC, and we can talk about an off ramp from this crazy. I mean, this is like a parallel, crazy universe. So I came home and was like, I don't even know what to do here. So I ended up talking to some of the researchers who really did know about masking efficacy and all these mitigations, and had done a lot of research even for the CDC on this. And we started working together. And out of that came something called the Urgency of Normal, which was this really courageous and unusual group of doctors that came together all around the country. We had like 15 doctors. Some of them are actually in the UK and
Okay.
in Canada, who faced a lot of personal risk by speaking up and signing on to this toolkit that
Yeah.
basically said that kids were going to face and had already been in the middle of the worst mental health crisis ever, and that COVID was not the danger, but what we were doing to them in the name of COVID was a grave danger. So when that came out, that was January 2022. After that, we followed it up with op-eds and speaking spots, mostly right wing media, Fox News and the New York Post. Like people are like, why don't you do the New York Times or Washington Post? Like they knew what we were
Nope.
doing. They wanted nothing to do with us.
Wow.
Um, and so after we got that out, parents from all over the world, not just the United States, reached out and said, thank you so much for collecting all of this data and presenting it in an adjustable, non-political way so we can use this to advocate, because before that we had an article here, a chart here,
Yeah.
nothing cohesive. And so this was very empowering for parents. And I understood after that we needed to keep doing it for parents, with regard to whatever risks children were facing from
Yeah.
special interests in government. So that's
Sure.
kind of how Restore Childhood was founded. And one of the other projects we're working on that will be out later this year,
Yeah.
hopefully before the election, is our documentary on school closures entitled 15 Days.
Oh,
Hopefully we'll
great.
get that out by middle of October.
Oh, it needs to get out then for sure, because I think a lot this first off, thank you so much for the work, because I think that people were being duped. I'm all about safety. I'm all about getting, vaccinations. I'm all about those things. I mean, I'm 62 years old. We grew up with vaccinations. You had to go to school and all those things, but it was so rushed. The vaccinations were so rushed and so mandatory. That got my brain thinking, wait a minute here, do we have any understanding of what's actually going on? Then they put everybody into fear mode. When you put everybody into fear mode, what happens? Everyone just follows, and everyone's just sort of doing this thing without understanding. Number three, the children. I had a kid at the same time who was doing Zoom school, and I could just watch how his whole brain, we would go and take him to the park every day, but no other kids were there, right? And then you had to even wear masks in the park. And I'm like, it's an open air park. Why are we wearing masks? So wow, it's just so fascinating that a lot of other people didn't see this. Now, when you started when you started advocating out there and going and trying to get the schools reopened, how many parents did you get on board with you?
Well, before I even joined, there was a Facebook group called Keep NYC Schools Open,
Okay,
and that grew to about 2,500 parents.
that's not bad actually.
Not all of them were active. When you actually went to the rallies, like, I mean, I went to the
How,
very first rally,
yeah,
there were
how many?
probably under 100.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow, that's
And,
shocking.
and a lot
Wow,
more press, though. That first rally did actually have the New York Times there,
it did.
and the first one. But I think after like the second or third one, it was
Oh no,
really more.
journalism is got insane during COVID with all the trans nonsense, all of it. No, New York Times, nobody would touch detransitioners. They wouldn't touch. I can equate detransitioners on some level to this whole sort of COVID thing and hiding what's actually going on, and
Yeah.
that really is shameful to me. With supposedly such high-ranking journalism like the New York Times or even the LA Times, like what they aren't. They lost their integrity as far as I'm concerned.
They did, and I'll add to that. We interviewed Anya Kamenetz, who was an education reporter for NPR
Okay.
for our documentary.
Oh,
And
great.
Anya had a more balanced view on school reopening. It was clear NPR really didn't, but she was able to somehow get pretty
Yes.
somewhat balanced stories out there.
Yeah.
And so when we interviewed her, something that really was like a mic drop moment was she was saying, she's like, wow, she's like, prior to COVID, education reporters were like the bottom of the barrel. Like there wasn't that much, there weren't that many stories. We were like, the
Right.
least important people in the newsroom. And then during COVID, all of a sudden it was like, popping out stories like crazy. And she said, we did have to, I think I must have asked her, I don't think she volunteered this, but she said, we did have to run the COVID stories past the health department, but the health desk. And I was like, so you couldn't write a story about masking and the harms of masking to kids or
No
vaccine?
way.
Well, she's like, well, they had to make sure that it was factually accurate.
But who are they to say that that's factually? Again, I'm gonna keep kind of going back and forth with trans and that, and there's many parallels that I see. There's an organization called GLAD that
Yeah.
I despise. They also are supposedly you have to run everything by them if you're going to do a news story or you're going to do anything, and they're going to tell you if it's right or wrong. I'm like, who are you? You're self-appointed gay and lesbian people who are telling people when I disagree with everything GLAD does as a transsexual, as a person that, but how do they get to overspeak? It's the exact same thing. How you have to run it. Who are these people who are appointed to do this? Like, where are they coming from, and what gives them the right to do that?
Right, and now we know, Jay Bhattacharya, Martin Kulldorff, all these scientists who were deplatformed, and the Great Barrington Declaration that was censored on social media. And it wasn't
Wow.
until Elon Musk took over X and invited, the Free Press and Matt Taibbi and Jay inside to take a look at what had been going on, and that
Yep.
resulted in a Supreme Court case about free speech and the First Amendment.
Yep.
But until then, like, I mean, think about all the debates and discussions and the
Yeah.
information that the average parent or the average,
That's
even
right.
anyone didn't have access to. So they thought there was an illusion of consensus.
Yeah, it's so insane. What happened to journalism? Seriously,
Yeah.
what happened to? That's why many of us started podcasts, right? Because we're
Yeah.
like, hold up. Even we get censored. I get censored on YouTube for sure. I
Mhm.
get suppressed on certain things. I have to blank out certain words. I'm not allowed to talk about certain things. I'm like, but that's suppression. That you're not. It's not free speech. That's not a free. To me, that there should be an overlord of something that is much more neutrally based that says these apps or these spaces shouldn't be allowed to silence because I have a different opinion than that person over there. How is that even? How did we get here in the United? You come from the Soviet or Ukraine, and you come from a space that is actually suppresses speech.
Yeah.
It
Well,
must
so
be
does the
shocking.
UK now.
Oh my! It must. Are your parents still around?
My parents are around, yeah.
They must be shocked.
I have to talk to them about it, but actually, my husband is English, so we've spent a lot of time in the UK, just outside of London, and that's always been my plan B. Like during COVID, I was like,
Yeah.
well, we'll just move to the UK. We'll just move to the UK. It wasn't that much better, and I met the advocates in the UK. It's an organization called Us for Them, and became friends with them. They advocated for open schools there, but
Hmm.
they faced similar issues. And my mother-in-law was just here visiting for a few weeks,
Hmm.
and just showing her some of the Tommy Robinson
Hmm.
videos, and having her listen to an interview with him and Jordan Peterson
Hmm.
about what happened to him. I mean, we're like looking at each other going, are we like, is this real? Like, I
I
don't
know.
even know what to think.
I know. I don't either. I'm really blown away that more people aren't understanding. I think more and more it's getting out. And whatever you all think about Elon Musk, I think the guy really, for better or for worse, has done wonders for free speech and really took a platform that I was even being silenced on, right? As a trans person, getting called transphobic and all of these other things. And now I can say whatever I need to say. So for me, I think on some level, he is a hero when it comes to free speech. And he
Yes.
did do what is supposed to be social media or social platforms. Is that not? Are we not supposed to have our own opinions and ideas?
Yeah, the solution for disinformation is more information, not less information.
That's right. And also, you should be able to, okay, I don't believe Buck, so I'm going to go over here and look at this, and I'm going to go over here, right? That's due diligence on some level, which people don't do anymore. They just listen to one person, and that's the way it is, right? And I'm like, but wait a minute. You can, if you're so Google, which I actually have issues with Google as well,
Right.
because I think
Yeah.
they also put things in spaces. I know people who work. It's a woke platform. I hate even using that term, but you understand what
Yeah,
I
it is.
mean,
But
right?
isn't Elon Musk starting his own search engine or something like that?
Supposedly, which would be incredible because I would totally do
Incredible.
that because I don't see the suppression on X. I don't. Even people who I disagree with are allowed to put. He doesn't silence people on there.
No, I think there are options for reporting posts, but they're pretty
Different.
common sense. They're common sense, right? They're like
Different.
insult or dehumanization or whatever.
Totally. Totally.
Like if you're inciting to violence, maybe I don't know.
But he
Maybe
also has a thing called community notes.
yes,
So where you can actually put factual information, which is so incredibly awesome and
yeah.
really just wrecks all of the disinformation that is being put out there. Now I want to get back to the
That's
kids.
democracy, by the way. Isn't that the most democratic thing you can do? You can now request a community note, and you can get people to weigh in. Like what's more democratic than that?
Yeah, but that says everything about what's happening in this country, right? And it's all complete bullshit. It's not democracy. And the people who want to hide your and I voices, they're not really Democrats. I even think the Democratic Party has lost its mind. And they aren't about what I stand for as a liberal person. I'm a liberal person. I believe in freedom of speech and things that you should be able to do and all, live your lifestyle and all that. But I don't believe that that party that I used to be a part of is even that anymore. They suppress other people's voices. It's bizarre to me that.
And amplify. Well, it's not just
Great
suppression;
point.
it's also amplification. It's
Great
both,
point.
right? Yeah,
That's right. Great point.
yeah.
So yeah, the kids. I'm totally. That's why I sit here today. That I'm very anti-transitioning children, and I speak out about it a lot. So I very much feel in alignment with you when it comes to children's mental health and how these things can be sort of disrupted and how they work. Did you notice that happening with your own children when this was happening?
Do you mean
The
emotional
the COVID.
dysregulation?
Yes. Yes.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, when they're that age, I mean, I had a kindergartner and a fourth grader, they
Yeah.
need their peers more than they
Totally.
need you
That's right.
in a way.
Yeah.
And so there's this disruption that can't be repaired
No.
and you can't explain it to them. I mean, they understand
Of course not.
intellectually, but my 5, 6 year old at the time was on the floor crying and asking for her friends, and I mean,
Oh,
I personally was trying to create social environments and
yes.
inviting people to at least outside, but very few people were willing to take
That's
that
right.
risk.
That's right.
So yes, of course I noticed it, and I noticed it also in their friends
Mm,
who had more significant disruptions than my children did
mm,
because parents were more cautious.
mm.
That afterwards, and their parents would tell me themselves that the kids became a lot more anxious, afraid of interacting with other adults,
Oh
kind of
God.
reclusive. So I think it bred and maybe these children already were prone to some emotional dysregulation, but I think it
Yes.
exacerbated it.
I totally agree with you, and I think maybe a lot of the stuff we're seeing today is residue of what happened during that time. I mean, socialization. I mean, let's just use dogs. If
Yeah.
dogs, right? If dogs aren't socialized with other dogs, they become mean and angry, and they won't be around other
Mhm.
dogs, and they're just not the same kind of loving, awesome animal because we're animals too, and so especially children need to be socialized. And so with that, what's happening today with your organization,
Well, I
Restore
just want
Child?
to also say that dogs also get freaked out by people in masks
That's
sometimes.
right. There's a reason. There's a reason because you need to read people's face, right? So that's a great point. During that time, people, even if you were out in public, you were still covering, right, people's expression. So you couldn't really read that person, or it was a very, very strange, weird time that I think we're still all kind of
Yeah.
on some level recovering from, right?
I felt like I was watching it in slow motion. Like I wanted to stop. I wanted to stop it. I wanted to scream at the parents who are walking their kids down the street with, masks on. Like sometimes the parents weren't even wearing the masks. It's still happening, by the way.
I know.
Uh,
I know.
but you can't confront people on the street. They'll think you're crazy, and that's not going
That's
to
right.
create the impact. So
That's right.
Restore Childhood was created for that reason.
Mm,
And we did a few campaigns. One was called I Am an Anti-Masker. It's at
mm.
IamAnAntimasker.com. If you want
Oh,
to see it, it's actually quite good. I think it's good.
great.
We
Great.
interviewed four. So anti-masker was used like interchangeably as right winger or Trumper. Like it was the worst thing you could possibly be, right? But I was like, okay, well, like I'll take that label. Sure. Like
Sure.
who else is an anti-masker? And
Right.
so we interviewed a woman in Harlem who's deaf and really found herself unable to
Oh,
communicate and be
oh,
independent in the way she was
wow.
used to when she went to the grocery stores or anywhere. She'd ask people to remove their masks. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. So suddenly she was very vulnerable, and it was very stressful, and she felt like nobody cared about her.
Huh?
We interviewed a mom down in Chelsea in New York City whose 3-year-old had anaphylactic food allergies, and a teacher gave him a cookie, didn't bother to look to see that there was a rash underneath, and put a mask on top of it. So he almost died.
Oh my God.
Um, we interviewed a little girl whose parents really didn't believe in masks, and she'd go and play at the playground, and the older kids would not even play with her because she was
Right.
not virtue signaling in the same way.
Yeah.
And she, one of the more poignant things she said in that interview was, they were the older kids. They shouldn't have treated me that way. And it's like, oh my
Oh
God, so
my
sad.
God.
And so that was one of the campaigns, kind of just owning it. We also made a video called "The Mask Will Come Off Tomorrow,"
Mhm.
pointing out the hypocrisy of people like Gavin Newsom or Garcetti, or our mayor, everybody going out maskless while kids continue. And that was a pretty viral video. It was on social media. So it started with the media stuff. Then we started shooting the documentary, because we knew that these people, the politicians and the teachers unions, would try to rewrite history and say, I was the one who was going to reopen schools. I wanted to
Right.
reopen them safely, and so
Right.
so I went across country with a friend who was a teacher for open schools,
Right.
Stephanie Edmonds, and we shot the documentary over the course of almost 2 years on a very
Wow.
shoestring budget.
Mhm.
And chapter one of that is being edited and will be released hopefully prior to the election. So
Yeah.
that's really a big piece of what we've done. And then we just released the toolkit on gender ideology, and that was
Oh.
something that was somewhat in the schools, really. That
Okay.
was inspired by the Urgency of Normal toolkit, trying to figure out how do we best communicate with parents, in all parents, right? It's not
Sure.
a partisan issue, but
No.
ultimately the people who are the most difficult to access are on the left. So we
That's
worked
right.
with a very progressive journalist from Brooklyn who understood this matter very well, and really she was talking to her own people, and then we also involved Dr. Chris Kalibi, who
Oh,
is a child and adolescent psychiatrist at
great.
the University of Southern Florida, who helped with the research part of it, and trying
Great.
to make sure that everything was factually accurate. We finished it just after the cast review came out, so we made sure that that was included in it as well. And I think that parents really need this. They need this now, and we've gotten emails from all over the world. I mean, I've gotten so many emails from New Zealand and Australia and Canada.
Great. Great.
It's
Great.
a world problem.
I'm telling you, I have a worldwide base of people who watch my show, and a lot of them are parents. The majority of my fan base tends to be women, a lot of them mothers, and they need this. So I can't wait to put this up there because they're all gonna just benefit from this. So can you tell us a little bit about the toolkit, what's involved in it?
So it's very image heavy as well,
Okay.
because I find that it's funny because we first finished, we thought we were done with it, and we
Sure.
shared it with some advocates, and they were like, and you're going to create a book and make it into an illustration. I was like, oh my God. I was like thinking Urgency of Normal, it worked so well, but
Yeah.
then I thought about it, I was like, people need to see more than that. So I think I really wanted to make sure we had helpful infographics that
Great.
illustrate some of the points. Like, for instance, like this is the one about the school to clinic pipeline that
Wow.
basically shows that it's,
Wow.
pronouns and name changes
Disgusting.
and all of that. You may be doing it for the right reasons and to be sympathetic, but it's a gateway drug. And
Yep.
once these children change, and the school and their secrets being held from parents who can no longer help them, that's just so dangerous. And
Yep.
also, I mean, then even for the parents who know, the problem is so many of these institutions are captured, so they
That's
go
right.
to a psychiatrist or a psychologist
That's right.
who immediately affirms.
That's right.
I think that there are a lot of pits,
Yeah. Yeah.
traps for.
There's traps. Well,
And so
first off, why is it even in the school system? Why is this particular thing in the school system? Because even if there is a trans kid, as you know, I don't believe that. But if there's a kid struggling with gender identity or all that, which I don't even know what that even means, it's like we always struggled with those kind of things as kids, right? It's totally normal behavior. But but the fact that it's actually being put forward in young people's minds, of course they're going to think they're struggling with that. So how did it get into the school, and why is this even being talked to with children?
I think it's the activist organizations, right? I mean,
It,
yeah.
but how can the activists override actual logical? School is for one thing, socialization of children, learning basics, reading, writing, whatever else is going on there, right? And to get into these next levels, what is the youngest? What is the youngest children, or the classes? What's the youngest class that these are being implemented in? Do you know?
I know that it's probably younger than that, but I know in kindergarten here in New York City, they've introduced a new book. The New York Post wrote about it last year and asked me for a comment about, like, just because a boy looks like a boy, it's a boy. Um, Not all boys have penises. Not
What?
all
Kindergarten?
kindergarten.
Now, how can that not be ideology? Come on. Boys have penises, girls have vaginas. Now, when you get old enough to sort of be dysphoric about your body like I was as an adult and da 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 da, that was never part of my dysphoria when I was a kid. My dysphoria was I want to be a boy. It wasn't anything about being a penis or a vagina or anything like that. That's why I can poke holes in all of this. Not they're actually teaching kids you can have a penis and be a girl. No, you can't. Also, that's a lie. You can't change your sex. So we're lying to children. That even that is shocking. It's like saying 2 + 2 = 5 to a kindergarten and starting them out with that on some
Well,
level.
math is racist, so math is,
My God. We're really here.
yeah.
We're really here.
I mean, some of these policies are hidden DEI policies, I mean, maybe they started out of a good place, like, of empathy and inclusion. I mean, who can
Mm,
argue against inclusion? I was bullied as a child, for
yeah,
being different, not speaking English.
sure.
Everybody wanted to be included. I don't know any of these policies would have been helpful to me. Like,
It makes you
I,
more confused. You're making kids more confused. Also, it's all based on a lie. That's what I'm saying. It's not you're not introducing, okay, maybe there's a gay kid in there, maybe there's a kid who, right? But they're very
yeah.
small. It's very small and few. It's the majority of kids are going to grow up to be straight, going to be, you know what I mean, going to be completely okay with their gender. There isn't going to be. They're making it seem like all of these kids are confused about their gender and sexuality. They're the
Well,
ones
they're
making.
creating it. They're
That's right.
creating that environment. I mean, a couple
That's
of
right.
years ago, like during the height of the COVID lockdowns and the schools had just reopened, and I remember my friend in Park Slope, Brooklyn,
Yeah.
talked about the fact that her son was he was probably in eighth grade, and there was not one girl in his class who identified as straight. Park
See?
Slope is super woke,
Yeah,
super
super woke. Yeah.
she was like, he doesn't even, there's nobody he can go out on a like first date with because all these girls say they're queer or, I mean, obviously this is a social contagion, right?
Totally. Totally.
And then of
Totally.
course, like what Abigail Schreier talks about with like immediately medicalizing someone instead of saying,
That's right. That's right.
don't do it. But, and then you listen to January Littlejohn, who's a good friend and
Yeah.
did the right thing and
Yeah.
turned to the school psychiatrist, the social worker, and what do? They steal her child from her. Like,
Oh my
I mean,
God.
essentially, they started to transition instead of giving her the help
Oh
as a
my
parent
God.
and a social worker, very
That's right.
smart woman, caring woman, and so
Yeah.
it's really hard because there's parents may be really trying to do the right thing, but like these schools are they have many predatory policies and personnel, and yeah, you
It's
can't turn to
shocking.
them.
Well, it's actually shocking. I cannot believe here, I live in California, which has gotten so out of control, that they passed that law that you can literally, first off, teachers don't have to tell kids about, they made it under the guise of gender identity. Okay, but what if the kid is saying some other stuff? And what if the teacher is a big, and it's like, shh, you don't have to. I mean, they literally opened the door for that. Come on, we're not all stupid here. It literally opened the door for weirdo teachers to keep secrets with the kids.
It's just it's like inverting everything. Like
Uh,
I just it doesn't make sense. And authoritative parenting is what is the best model, right? Not authoritarian, authoritative.
that's right.
But
That
they're taking the authority away from the parent and they're treating parents
that's
like
right.
child abusers and
Yep.
teachers like parents.
Oh my God, it's shocking to me. And that's why when my kid went to the school, I showed up right on parent day. I'm looking for the flags and I'm looking for the LGBT crap in the room. And me, my partner and I are very that, space, but we don't put it in front of our kids' space. We're very like, that's our personal life. But that being said, I showed up. If there was one flag, I was gonna be that parent. I was like, nope, that is not. But there wasn't. I was actually kind of shocked that there was no LGBT stuff. No, my kid goes to elementary school. Like, what are you people doing here? And that being said, and then Gavin Newsom is completely insane, and he passing all. We're a sanctuary state.
Yeah. New
What?
York is too.
And they just passed it. Is it Minnesota? Where's Walls from?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Minnesota.
yeah. That's also a sanctuary state, right? And
So that
trans
means that
kids.
that's what I was saying. Like, so if a dad from Florida can't get their kid transitioned in
That's right.
Florida and brings that kid to New York or California, New
Yep.
York or California won't even communicate with the mother who's trying to get the kid back to tell them that they're here.
Unbelievable. How is that even a thing? That what's happening to this country? It's shocking to me that so what's happening. I always say it. It's not a sanctuary state. You are dividing families. You are breaking up families when you do that. Of course, one parent might be okay, one parent not, but that's a personal space that the parents need to take care of in therapy with somebody dealing with it as a family unit. And now the state is stepping in, saying we know more for you and your My parents struggled with me as a kid, right? And they got me in therapy. They got me in that because what's going on here. It's a little girl. It's not a boy, but we don't really understand. And they worked it. We were all worked it out as a family, right? Because that's what you're. And today, my parents are still married, 67 years or some insane thing like that. But you understand what I'm saying? Of course you do. You're a family person, and I really believe they're attacking families.
They are. They're definitely attacking families. I mean, look at what they've done with Moms for Liberty, and you know,
That's right. That's
I've
right.
known the founder, Tiffany Justice, since 2021 when
Yep.
I went on one of her very first podcasts, and it
Yeah.
was like unheard of. It was like I was a New Yorker, and New Yorkers wouldn't talk to right wingers, God
I
forbid.
know.
But I was like, she invited me on, and I
Yeah.
saw some of her work. I thought she was doing great work, and
Yeah.
she said, "Would you come on?" And I said, "Of course." And
Right.
she was like, "Oh, thanks." She's like, I want you to know that it just might be you and I listening. I have no This is like how grassroots they are, right?
Totally.
So I went on, we had a great conversation. We've done that many times over the years, but the way they villainize them for just standing up for the family,
That's
and
right.
really some of their work is very similar to what Tipper Gore did in the 80s or the
That's right.
90s,
That's right. Great point.
labeling offensive lyrics, or kind of pointing out that there is some content that needs to be
That's
age
right.
appropriate, right? I mean, Moms
That's
for
right.
Liberty is Tipper Gore.
Oh, that's such a great analogy. And I never even thought about that. You're right, because I grew up in that time where the lyrics, right? And so now as an older person, I definitely have a much bit more conservative views. There's no doubt about that. That just, I think, is a natural progression with people. But that being said, I remember when they started having to rap music with that thing that said NC-17. And now looking back, what a great idea. Because also as a parent, it's up to me to make sure I know what my kid is listening to. I need to know what games he's playing on that. I need to know what's going on Discord. It's not okay. He's 12 years old, and 12-year-olds think they know everything also. And so, like, no, I need to see what's going on in this game, kiddo. Are they putting trans people in the game? I ask him all the time, like, are there non-binary characters in there? Because that is, to me, sliding in an ideological thing to a 12 and 13-year-old who's very, very easily
But they're doing it in cartoons too. I mean, a friend of mine had showed me some very young children's cartoons where they were very sneaky, and like the first four episodes are perfectly normal. So the parents like, okay,
Oh,
watch it,
wow.
and then suddenly there's like a non-binary,
That's right.
hippo who's the leader of the entire pack, and everybody's like, "You're the hero. You're the." I mean, how do you introduce this to a child?
That's right.
And
That's
the
right.
parents don't even know. I mean, the parents shouldn't have to be that on guard. Or didn't we
No,
just spend all these years telling parents not to be helicopter parents?
that's right.
Now they
Great
really have
point.
to be helicopter parents.
We're forced to do it. I don't like it either, but I just come to it away. into a way where I say to him, look, kiddo, I just want to see, I don't care what you do. Like, you can play these fighting games, all of that, but I just really want to see. I try to do it in a way that doesn't seem like I am that sort of dude that's just like, what are you watching? What's happening? You know what I mean? Just like, I want to see what's happening. But wow, I didn't think about that. So 1, 2, 3 episodes, everything's cool. I'll walk away. And then bam, they start throwing that. Oh my God. It scares me, honestly, because I don't want to be that parent that's like, you
So I
can't do
think
that.
I think to me the cure, if there is a cure to that, is inoculation. Like they're trying
Right.
to put all this stuff outside the home. You bring it back in. So you read the toolkit. I mean, my hope for this toolkit is we raise
Great.
some more money and we get somebody to adapt it for different age
Great.
groups, like one for 5 to 9, another one for 9 to 13, because I
Great.
think those are two different, like very vulnerable stages in
Totally.
children's lives.
Yes.
And you talk to them about it. We used to have these conversations around the dinner table about like what the most pressing things were.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see parents doing that again. Like I have to tell you, I told my kids about all of this as
Yeah.
soon as I found out about it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then when it came up at school, they came home and were like, oh, in sex ed, they didn't refer to us as girls and boys. They refer to us as AFABs and AMABs. What the hell is that? Do you know what
Oh,
that is?
assigned female at birth, but that's wrong. That language was co-opted from intersex people. That intersex people are actually assigned. Me and you are. Me and you are biologically female. We're not. So that's what I'm saying. So actually, that's brilliant. Your kids are coming home, and my kid is too. He goes, "Oh, there's a non-binary kid at school, but we all laugh at him." And I'm like, "Right on." Because I'm always like, non-binary isn't real, dude. Just don't even pay attention to that stuff. Oh my God. I mean, I feel sorry for the non-binary kid, but that kid also got. I live in California, in LA, in Hollywood. Let me tell you, it is so insanely woke here. It's like I'm like, we have homeless people on the street shooting up drugs and fentanyl, and I'm like, where's the compassion? It's not compassionate to let people be homeless and be on fentanyl and struggling, and you're like, what? No, they should be in shelters or spaces or something. That's not compassionate. But I wanted to also go back to this idea that we get called right wing. I don't know your political beliefs. It's totally. I have no issues with how
Still a
other people.
registered Democrat.
There you go. And we get completely sideswiped with this. You're a right winger, and that's not doing anybody any good, right? That's not helping the Democrats. That's not even. It's not. I'm not. I'm completely
Notice the Republicans never say you're a left winger.
brilliant. Brilliant. How could I have more respect, honestly, coming from they seem to have more respect. They seem to have much more of a solid platform. They seem to have a much more solid message, right? Where the Democrats are all over the place and like it feels like they have to put stuff out there in order to get you to sort of be on their side. Where they're just straight up, this is how our platform is and this is what we believe in and that's how we are.
It's sociopathic. I find that the new Democrats are sociopathic, and they always
Great.
accuse others of doing what they do.
That's
They
right.
just they just do it better, and they've co-opted the entire language,
Oh
and
my God.
that's terrifying. I mean, that's
Terrifying.
why in our toolkit we introduced like a vocabulary at the end
Great.
that we
Great.
really think that in order to be able to feel comfortable talking about gender
Hmm.
and gender nonconformity,
Hmm.
you need to know the words and what they mean and have access to
Excellent.
literature on the subject.
Excellent.
Whether it's Hannah Barnes' A Time to Think or the Helen Joyce book or
Excellent.
access to, Jen Specht's articles. I mean,
Great.
these are all great, brave people,
Yes.
and there are people who've really taken a lot of chances, like
That's
the
right.
whistleblowers and Jamie Reed
All
and
great
Eitan
people.
Haim. I mean, these people are
Great.
taken first. Like it's scary. I can't imagine how brave you have to be in order
Yeah.
to step out like that, but they're doing
Yeah.
it because they know it's so wrong.
And also, I think a lot of them are parents. And I think when you're a parent, you come to things with a different way of being because you think of your child in the future. And, we're all obviously very reality based people. And
Hmm.
I care about the future for kids, right? And I care about the fact that this trans thing has gotten so deep into this space that it's a lie. And as a transsexual who did transition and really did do wonders for me, changed my life on so many levels. But like I always tell you, as an adult, after years and years of therapy, after living a life prior to this, and then realizing it's just not the way I can live. But I see something so destructive and sickening, not only as a transsexual, but as a parent, that I just can't believe more transsexual people aren't stepping up to the plate and speaking about it. It scares me, honestly.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I think it's
Yeah.
all coming from a parental space. A lot of us speaking up, and a lot of the people you mentioned who are all great people, all amazing people, as you
And all the
are.
detransitioners who, so much has been taken from them.
That's how we
Um,
got connected, Maya.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, she's been an incredible voice of sanity. And, she said, like I was all about this because, well, she's just written a couple of articles for our Substack.
Yay.
We just released the second one
Yay.
today, but she said,
Great.
she's 25, but she spent the second 12 years of her life from age 12 to 24 wanting to be a man and then living
Wow.
as a man
Wow.
in Israel
Yeah.
and the Palestinian territories. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until October 7th when, all hell broke loose and she was running from her apartment and didn't have her breast binder
Oh
and
my
was
God.
trying to figure out how to still continue
Yeah.
the deception really.
Yeah.
That she realized she actually didn't need it and was happier without it and was glad that she hadn't taken
Yeah.
the next step and become medicalized and is now exploring her identity as a butch lesbian and really trying to restart the lesbian community.
I know. I love her. I just love her. I've been very, very blessed to interview many detransitioners who trust me that I'm not going to, use their story as anti anything, because I, as a transsexual, feel very connected to them and wished it should have never happened to them. It's disgusting. It actually destroys it for people like me who actually need it, right? So
Hmm.
really, their stories resonate a lot with me, and she should have been able to grow up in that space and then figure it out as an older person, and maybe it never would have happened. But she's now going to have damage, whether it's physical or not. Mental damage is just as insane as physical damage, and that's what these people. There's an agenda. There is an. I don't care what anybody says. There is some weird agenda targeted at children, and not just trans, but this whole idea that we can start teaching kindergartens or is that you're assigned female at birth, or that boys are girls and girls are boys, and wow, just totally mixing up their whole brains.
Yeah, and just completely deleting biological facts. I mean, just it's really dangerous to create an environment that's so relativistic. Like there's nothing to stand on. Like you're not a boy, you're not a girl,
That's
you're
right.
non-binary,
That's right.
um, attracted to everything and everyone and no one.
What?
And I mean, I have a teenager. She's worn baggy clothes for the past couple of years. We know
Yeah.
why. Like
Of
she's
course.
a worm, like what is it, caterpillar that
Yeah.
transitions into a
That's
butterfly.
that's right.
But we're telling them that that's pathological, and that's
I
if you're
know.
uncomfortable in your body, it must be because you're something wrong with your body. Like
That's right. That bam. That's it. I did go through female puberty. And never was I told my body was bad, ever. Okay. I just wanted to be like the boys, but I never was I told that. My mom brought me a training bra, which is basically nothing. I went through my period getting the big, back in the day, there were these blocks with this belt thing. Like I struggled with all of that, but I did it and I made it through. I keep saying struggle is important for kids. You can't not take struggle out of a child's life. And then puberty is literally the basis of going from a child to an adult, right? And we're eliminating that by giving them puberty blockers, as if that is even like a thing. That So I want to ask you also. Well, I think I know the answer to this, but do you think that this COVID insanity, where we locked everybody down, we got them on Zoom, I'm talking specifically about children, do you think that also was a gateway to this gender insanity?
yeah, I mean, ed tech and advertising and influencers grabbing hold of these kids. I know
Yeah.
people whose children really never spent any time online at all. I mean, mine certainly didn't.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like, everything was online all the time. And I mean, just the number of hours.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think for sure, like, locking down and creating, well, also, like, divisions between people,
Mm,
like,
mm,
good people mask, bad people don't mask, good people
right.
back. I remember in our elementary school when we went back, like the second graders were asking each other who had gotten the COVID shot, and it was like, why are they talking about this? They should be like playing with
That's
Lego,
right.
and it just created this, just very isolated, broken down society where communities and families, I mean,
Yeah,
I know people who couldn't go home for Thanksgiving because their
yeah,
child wasn't vaccinated and the grandfather didn't want to take the chance or whatever it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
And I think, children were treated as viral vectors. That's what Andy Slavitt, who was it
Hmm.
Obama's or Biden's like head of, I guess it would have been Biden at that point, head of COVID response, said,
Hmm.
he in a tweet, I bookmarked it, he said that children were viral vectors, like mosquitoes or something like that.
But
And so
that's
I
not
think that's
true.
what we treated them like. They were the bottom of the
But there's
barrel.
no factual information. There's no facts with that at all. And do you know? Do you have any statistics on how many young children maybe passed from COVID? Do we know?
I don't have the statistics, but they were so small.
Yeah.
There's a woman named Kelly Croner in Georgia, and she ran something called COVID Georgia. It was a
Okay.
tracker, and
Okay.
she, as a citizen scientist, was correcting the CDC's misinformation because they were like, oh, one in however many, and it
Wow.
was like point oh something percent of kids that actually
Wow.
died from COVID, and they all had comorbid conditions,
Comorbid.
which, by the way, we're talking about, right, with gender identity issues. Oftentimes,
Exactly the
that's
same.
one of the conditions, right? It's yeah. So, I mean,
Wow.
still very tragic, but
Of
any
course.
virus that spreads quickly is going to be tragic, and
Of
there are
course.
going to be people who are, the elderly,
That's
but
right.
the right approach, well, there was a pandemic playbook, and the Great Barrington Declaration was trying to reinforce that. And Scott Atlas and Jay Bhattacharya, they were the heroes who, just like all of the whistleblowers now that are
Mm,
speaking out about
mm.
the harms of gender ideology and what these
Yes.
hospitals are doing. Scott and Jay and Martin at Harvard had all spoken out. And, when we spent time with Jay, because he's in our documentary,
Okay.
he walked us around the Stanford campus, and he's been there since he was an undergraduate, and he's about 55 now. So
Mm.
his entire life, really, both as an undergraduate, a graduate, and a professor. And there were signs with his face and name on it, like, get Jay, or this is, a public enemy or whatever. And it was like pacifist, religious, like very, very data driven, really good humanitarian person who really felt like he couldn't stay quiet,
Hmm.
was suddenly being hunted on his campus.
Jesus.
Um,
Stanford, though. Like another very woke.
it is.
It
But they
is.
have the Hoover Institute. They have the Hoover Institute, and that's
Okay.
more conservative.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. And
But for gender ideology, Stanford is very. They have that weirdo. I think Dr. Jack Turbin. I think is.
oh,
Oh, he is actually the new. I actually equate him to John Money.
oh,
Yeah, he's very similar to that, and it's all going to come out, but it's going to suck because all these kids are going to be hurt from it, and all of us are like, wait, but he's just writing books and looked at as this sort of guru of trans kids and like, what, dude, you're gay. First of all, he's a gay man. I'm like, he has some internalized homophobia going on. Right.
well, that, yes, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's unfortunate. I mean, I've heard
Yeah.
Andrew Sullivan talking early on, like a few years ago. He was talking about the fact that when he was a young gay boy in England,
Yeah.
if trans had existed, they would have,
Oh,
immediately
totally. Yeah.
pushed him down,
I
and how
believe
sad
that.
that is.
It's very sad. It's the whole thing, but eventually truth comes to the surface. You and I think both know that the truth will come after so many people and a lot of children are being hurt, and a lot of families being torn apart. Not just the gender stuff, but even the COVID stuff. It really did destroy a lot of families because some people were pro, some weren't, and it really made a lot of schism between parents and then the kids and but it's all coming to the surface now. It is Fauci was the same person who was ahead of the AIDS epidemic,
Yeah,
which I
exactly.
grew up in the same
Yeah,
crap
me too.
happened. Totally. A lot of
Me
people
too.
died.
But the problem is that we've also created a huge distrust of public health,
That's
and
right.
people don't trust doctors. So our pediatrician doesn't trust the CDC anymore.
Mhm.
Many people don't trust their pediatricians
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
People aren't trusting their schools
I
anymore.
know.
We're not trusting our president. Our city council members are like creating sanctuary cities and, giving away our ball fields to migrants who
My
are
God.
taking over. Our kids don't have sports in New York City. So
What?
what I mean, to me, like, I don't like to be conspiratorial, but like, isn't that what George Soros's open society is supposed to be, where
There
everything,
you
like,
go.
all norms are thrown out
That's
and
right.
chaos ensues? I mean, that's what James Lindsay says. I haven't, read Soros's book, but it sure seems like that's what they were going for, and they've certainly thrown in a lot of money to make it so.
Well, they don't want you to think. See, that's the other thing. They want us to distrust our own belief with gaslighting, right? They don't want us to see that. Oh, you're not seeing that. That's just not real. But it's literally happening right in front of our eyes. And if we do talk about these kinds of things, then we're racist or we're anti-immigrant. I'm not. Yeah, you're an immigrant. First off, my dad came from Canada. Like, are you fucking? My grandmother's from Ireland. Like, wait a minute here. What are you talking about? That's what America is built on. But we have to have a safe way, and we have to have a legal way for people to come to this country. Nobody's saying not to bring people into this country, but we're saying we have to have a safe, understanding way. But guess what? We come first. The people who live here and pay taxes and
Right.
participate in our society have to come first. We can't
Put
take
on
care
your
of.
own gas mask, right? Or like
That's
your.
exactly what I go. We can't take care of the rest of the world when we're literally not being taken care of. Like, what is.
But strangely, I go toward the tenement museum down in the
Mm,
Lower East Side
mm,
with my daughter, and
mm.
they create this illusion that, like, the people who came here, were white supremacists in some way,
That's
or
not true.
they create guilt around legal migration,
That's
which.
right.
Well, and like,
That's right.
you're touring these places, and it just doesn't feel like there is a sense of nationalism that they're trying to impart. But all these people came here because America was so great, and my family came here, and many generations afterwards. Keep migration legal and
That's
safe,
right.
but
That's
I live near shelters, and I see little kids being dragged down the street in the middle of the night from one location to another, or on the subways selling candy when they should be in school. By the way, many of those little immigrant kids have iPads or iPods. They're always looking into a screen. Who gave that to
how did
them?
they get those?
Right. And why? I mean, why is that what we want for these new arrivals? Is this what they didn't come here for that, did
No,
they?
they. Well, that's right. What a great. Wow, I could do. I would love to do a whole thing on that. And it's gross that we get called these certain names when we're like, wait a minute, this country wasn't built. It was built to let people come here and create a space where we can all live free. We're supposed to be living free and be able to do what we want to do. But you can't. You can't just not. Yeah. Now we just got called racist, or if we're for this kind of stuff, we're Nazis, and you know what I mean. I'm just like, wow.
Whenever they say right winger, I just say, well, how many wings does a bird need to fly? I don't know. I've never seen just a right winged bird. Like, that would be weird.
That's, I mean, it's really insane because we really kind of have to go to a more, and it's considered conservative. Actually, logical reality is considered conservative. Okay, then I guess I'm just gonna have to take. you know,
Conserving things is not bad, is it? Otherwise, you're wasteful. We're wasting young girls' breasts and,
oh my God! I
their
mean,
childhood
if any of
systems.
my fights, I'm gonna tell you right now, whatever immigration, all of that, the economy, my fight sitting here today is for women and children. That's it. I don't care. Everything else I can put over here right now, but I will refuse to watch these young girls being told they're boys and literally cutting their boobs off at 14, 13. And do not tell me it's not happening. I've interviewed them. Okay. I've interviewed a girl, a boy who became a girl at 8 years old. And now she's 23 and wish she never did it. Or now he's trying to live as a man, and he looks like you. Like, why are people pretending this isn't happening? It's just mind blowing. So, well, thank you so much, my friend. You're a beautiful soul. You have really a great heart, and I really do value you as a friend and also somebody who's fighting for the kids and to get us back into a sense of reality. I'll put all of just name off your websites real here, and then I'll also put them in the description of the video.
Sure. So our website is restorechildhood.com, and it's got all of our projects, but and you can find the toolkit there. But if you
Great.
just want to find the toolkit and download it, it's gendertoolkit.com.
You're so great. Thank you for doing the work. Thank you for really caring about the kids and also families and just us
Yeah.
and the United States for real. Well, your parents did a good job bringing you here right on, my friend. And so, with that, everybody, leave beautiful comments like you always do. I'll put all the information. You can reach out to her, and let's support these organizations. Is how we're going to get back to a sense of normalcy. And I appreciate you all. See you guys all Wednesday on the live. And